The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. A dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. Big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another action-packed, fun-filled, and horrifying show. I use that inflection, of course, because our guest is the current writer of the Elvira comics for Dynamite, David Avallone. David is a very interesting character, comes from a rich history. He had a famous pulp writer father, Michael Avallone, who did some amazing work. And we talk about it in the podcast, but also he started off in film, did a lot of indie film, and has gone on to do some amazing work in comics, drawing blood. And man, we have a really great long conversation, and I still missed a lot of stuff. We talked for like an hour and a half, which is why I'm not going to make a really long intro for this, but there's all stuff in here that I didn't get a chance to talk to him about. So hopefully maybe someday I'll get a chance to follow up on some of the stuff we didn't get to, like the Radically Rearranged Ronin Ragdolls, which has a connection to a previous guest on the show, Troy Little, as well as, his work on the Drawing Blood comic with Kevin Eastman. I mean, obviously that's a pretty big one as well. So didn't really get a chance to talk about those things, but, maybe down the line we'll get a chance again. Sometimes when you talk to people with such rich histories that have such filled, volumes in their past that you can't fit it all into an hour and a half or an hour, depending on the length of the conversation. Sometimes it goes longer, we get multiple parts, but I feel like, you do your best. And I feel like we got a good vibe, you understand who David is as a person, his work. And and I think you'll like him as much as I did. It was a great conversation. And I really, really enjoyed it. So here it is, my conversation with David Avallone.
They're nice. It's a pleasant day. The heat wave is mostly broken for now. I was just looking at the temperature.
What is the heat wave there?
Oh, it was in the 90s for a couple of days here, which I know it's Southern California, but that's warm even for us in March. It's March. But yeah, it's a little under control.
You'll pardon me for not being too sympathetic. I'm looking at the snow that is falling outside my window right now. So,
where are you located?
Nova Scotia, Canada.
Oh yeah, that's about the opposite of Southern.
It's like 3 degrees today, but just started snowing a little bit. Wow. So our system's different. I don't know what that is in the other scale, but yeah, a little cold, a little chilly, but not too bad. We're getting there. Awesome. So where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New Jersey, from central New Jersey, and went to college in upstate New York, and then moved to Los Angeles in 1987, about 3-4 months after I got out of college. Mm-hmm. And I have been here ever since.
And what did you take in college?
Film. I was a film major, and I went to a really good school with a really good educational system. So I dabbled in a lot of other stuff there, and a lot of that other stuff has influenced me as a writer. I stumbled across a really great science teacher in my first year taking a required science course, and the guy was just really interesting. And I've always kind of had an interest in science and cosmology and history, and that was sort of the angle from which he taught science. So I ended up taking 5 physics classes, like you do when you're a film major. But like I said, the college was good for that kind of thing. So
that's cool. So film. Yeah. So growing up was film going into, I think, writing and obviously film was
film was my main thing. I stumbled into comic books in 2014, a colleague of mine who I'd met on social media, who I'd met on Twitter, and I was doing some behind the scenes media for the TV show Winona Earp
Hmm.
for the Sci-Fi Channel and for IDW. I was shooting and editing it, which is one of the things that I was doing at the time, though I'd always been a writer. And she asked to read an old script of mine. It took her about 6 months to get around to it. And when she did, she went, "Oh, you're really good at this. You should." And she said, "I can't help you with film at all, but I know some people in comic books. I could tell them you're a good writer and try and get you a comic book writing gig." And introduced me to Joe Rybant, my good friend now, at San Diego Comic Con, and we sat at an outdoor table at the Bayfront Hilton Bar for a couple of hours and talked about movies and books and life and things we had in common and all that. And at the end of the conversation, Joe said, "Well, let me go back to New York and see if I got anything that I can try out on." And I wrote a series for them called Legendary Vampirella, which was a spin-off on a series called Legendary, created by Bill Willingham. I actually had to pass an audition with Bill.
Really?
Uh, yeah, I jumped on the phone with Bill, where he basically said, "Hey, what are your plans? What are you going to do with the characters?" Um, and Bill and I, I don't know that we see things the same politically, but we come from the same cloth in terms of old pulp fiction and what we love and all of
Hmm.
that. So I think I knew which buttons to push. And I wasn't, not to say that I was being manipulative, but
Yeah.
I had a feeling he'd dig what I had in mind, and he did. And I threw myself into understanding comics literally and in the sense of Scott McCloud's
Yeah, I
book,
was going to say the book as well. Yeah.
and figuratively in the overall sense of understanding comics. And because I've said this a lot, but I grew up making films and wanting to be a filmmaker and watching films from a point of view of someone who wanted to make them, in a way that didn't in any way distract from me enjoying them. But I was, aware of cinematography and acting and direction and
Mhm.
musical scoring and editing and all of that. But I had never read comics with any kind of interest in how is this working? What is this
Mm.
doing? What are the effects of this? So I literally went over to my shelf and pulled out like Darwin Cook's New Frontier, which is my favorite, probably my
Excellent.
favorite superhero comic
Yeah.
ever.
Good
And I
choice.
went, "Oh, these are all three-panel pages with three beautiful CinemaScope movie. He's making a movie.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, Watchmen is nine-panel grid. Oh, you know, the auteurs like Eastman and Chaikin and Miller will do a single panel page and they'll do a page with 20 panels on it if they
Yep.
feel like it. If they really want to atomize time and show you every moment of a hand on a sword and a sword going through the air and a head coming off and you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
like they will break up time in really interesting ways. And Chaikin in particular, the way Chaikin manipulates a page and his sense of design,
Mm.
like Steranko's sense of page design
Hmm.
coming from like Madison Avenue, classical graphic arts education, all really interesting.
Wow.
And these guys had already always influenced me as a writer, but not as a comics writer. So learning all of that and absorbing all that, I always tell I was 49 when I wrote my first comic book.
Wow.
And I mean, not counting the comics I made and drew when I was in high school and college,
Sure.
which,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, that
Which are the
the
same, right? In
nicest
quality and length, right? I'm sure.
the nicest thing anyone ever said about my comics making in college was a friend of mine said, "You're like a fourth-rate Don Heck."
That's great. I'll
I
take
was like,
that.
not a fourth-rate Jack Kirby, not a fourth-rate John Romita, Don Heck. Let's set our
I don't know who the three ahead of you to Don Heck would be.
oh,
Yeah,
they're much better than I am, that's for sure. And at the
That's
time, I was
amazing.
enough of a snob. I went, Don Heck. I'm like, no, Don Heck is definitely better than I am. That's absolutely. Not even particularly a big fan, but he's much, much better than I am. So,
Wow, well, it sounds like you really took a very like analytical approach to
yeah,
studying comics and when it came to writing them, as well as just because like even if you look at scripts, like how those writers write their scripts compared to like I remember it opened my eyes a lot when I think I got some kind of special edition of The Dark Knight Returns or something where it showed his Miller script in the back, and it was written like a short story kind of. It wasn't
yeah.
page broken down because I
Well, I
guess
mean, it's so the first thing that I learned about comic writing that I thought was hilarious and explained the chaos of the industry was that there's no format.
no,
There's no
not a
accepted
universally
format.
accepted one. No, no,
Like like, and particularly, I get it. If you're drawing it, Frank Miller doesn't need to tell himself
that's true.
how many panels there are on the
Yeah,
page,
exactly.
what's happening in every panel. He just knows, he knows what he's doing. But artists that I work with cannot read my mind. I'm not drawing it. I'm not doing thumbnails.
Hmm.
In as an experiment, when I wrote my first comic script, I drew it. I did not attempt to draw it for anyone else to look at.
Mm.
It was more like a way for me to look at the page and go, does this work? Does everything fit? Are the balloons going to fit? And I drew the whole comic that way. And most key, because I wanted to be able to do this work going forward, I liked it. I didn't show those thumbnails to the artist because I didn't want to influence them.
Mm.
And if you look at the finished pages of Legendary Vampirella, I did the first two issues where I drew them.
Hmm.
If you look at the finished issues and my drawings, it looks like the artist gave the comic to his 5-year-old child, and the 5-year-old tried to redraw it
Really?
without any knowledge or ability in perspective or caricature or
Yeah.
anything. So when I saw that, I went, okay, you can relax. You don't have to do this every time.
Yeah.
This was a good experiment, but clearly you're writing the script well enough that the artist is drawing what you're seeing in your
Mm.
mind enough for you to not have to do this again.
Well,
So every once in a while, I'll get a note from an artist saying, I don't understand how all of this fits in the frame. I don't understand this, what you have in mind here. And then I'll like draw something and send it to him and say, here's how I imagine everyone is standing. Here's where they will be, etc.
mhm.
But I'm a
And,
fanatic about reference.
uh-huh.
I think partly that comes from the fact that uh, I do a lot of stuff that's set in periods,
Mhm.
and I understand that it takes me, particularly if I've got it outlined, it really takes me maybe 2 days to write a comic book script. The
Mhm.
outlining is actually the time-consuming part. The taking the long shower and thinking about how is this working? How does this happen? But once I've done that, I can sit down and write a comic in 2 days. It's going to take the artist a minimum of 20 and up to 30, 40 days to draw it.
Yeah.
So every minute they spend, say, on a Betty Page comic that I've written going, what does a taxi cab look like in 1953 New York again? What does a phone look like? What dress should she be wearing? I try to give them all of it. And even like for most characters that are important, I will suggest an actor
Mhm.
or a face from someone I know. And just as a way of saying, don't draw this face, but this is the kind of person.
Mm.
This is the physicality.
Mm.
When I did Doc Savage Ring of Fire, which is set in 1940, I think. Can't remember if it's 38 or 40. It's pre-America's entry into World War II. But I gave the artist Dave Acosta all 1930s faces.
Mm.
Not that people looked that different then, but like there's something about seeing a comic book where everyone is a semi-familiar face from the 1930s
Mhm.
where it feels right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You didn't just
So
send him
like
the
my
Doc
Gary
Savage film?
No, God, no. The opposite of that. No, my Doc Savage was not Ron Ely as much as I like Ron Ely as an actor.
Mhm.
I said it's Gary Cooper who's been to the gym.
Yeah. that makes
You
sense.
know,
Yeah.
Gary Cooper with the Rock's body under his head.
Yeah.
I even found a publicity photo of Cooper where he had his hair very tightly slicked back to his head,
Really?
sort of like the skull cap on the paperback covers. The longest conversation you have with an artist on Doc Savage is his hair.
Yeah, because it's always sort of weird, like the way it's drawn. And he always seemed to me, like I remember as a kid looking at those pulp books, um, thinking it like it seemed like a helmet or a mask, or like
Yeah,
it was almost like plastic, like
yeah, the Bama
yeah,
covers, he actually looks like he's wearing a metal helmet.
yeah, yeah.
And some of that is actually a misunderstanding. There is one pulp novel where does actually have a metal skull cap on.
Okay.
And I think Bama took that, he's an incredible artist, but I think he took that a little too much to heart and went, oh, he wears this all the time.
Yeah.
But like doing the hair version of that
Mm.
is the conversation you always have to have with the artist because people expect Doc Savage to look like that because of the
Mm.
paperback covers, but that's not what he looked like on the Pulp magazine covers at all.
Yeah, I always kind of thought he was made like until you get old enough to actually learn about these characters. When you're a kid, you see the
Yeah.
books, and you're
Yeah.
like, you're young enough. Like I read some Conan books and stuff as a kid, but like you look at them and you're just like, oh, that guy's made of metal. Like I just
Yeah.
assumed he was made of
Yeah.
metal.
No,
He was like
but
some kind of tin or copper. He was always
the
bronze.
paintings are amazing and they're incredibly evocative and they
Mm.
absolutely, as when I was a kid, they made me want to read the books,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's not really what the guy looks
No,
like.
I know. I thought he's just
So
a dude. I was like, what? What the? He's some kind of
I
metal man.
literally found a picture of Gary Cooper from a movie called The Real Glory about the Philippines, where he was in horse riding boots, jodhpurs, and a ripped khaki military shirt. And I was like, okay, here it is. Here's Doc Savage, 1938.
Nice.
Everything about this is right. But yeah, all that to say that I do a lot of every project I open a Pinterest page and not as a mood board, as literally like, here's the gun on page 5, here's the hat on page 7, here's the phone on page 10, and actually, it was kind of a funny thing, but I have an upcoming comic called Two-Fisted Fairy Tales, which
Great
I'm
title.
very excited about. Um, and it's about it's the very quick pitch for it is it's a cross between The Princess Bride and Band of Brothers.
Sold.
Um,
If you gave me that
and
elevator pitch, I would happily buy that
right,
book. Yeah,
it's
100%.
and the true story is that in the early 1970s, when I was a little kid, my dad, who was a novelist, a pulp fiction writer himself, and a World War II veteran, decided for reasons that I will never know because I never asked him to tell me all of the classic fairy tales as World War II combat stories about himself.
Really? What a
So,
gift.
like,
What a gift. Oh my
the
God.
first time I heard Little Red Riding Hood, Red and her grandma were in the French Resistance, and the wolf was a Nazi major. Still a wolf, by the way, but a Nazi major. And you know how at the end of the story, the woodsmen break in and kill the wolf.
Yeah.
It's my dad kicking the door open with his size 9 combat boot and spraying the wolf with a Thompson submachine gun. Like that's how that story ended for me when I
Wow.
was a kid. And he didn't tell them in that faux fairy tale style. He told them the way he wrote mystery novels. So like when he told me Sleeping Beauty, it would start like, so my unit pulled into a small town in Belgium and all the townspeople were gathered in the center of the square. And in the center of the square, there was this glass box with this sleeping chick in it. It's crazy. Nobody could wake her up. So like that's how I kissed her on the
Wow.
cheek. She slapped me right across the chops. Like consent is everything, kid. Don't
Yeah.
sleep. Don't kiss sleeping chicks. It's rude. But like, but that's how I heard those stories. And I pitched it to Dynamite a bunch of years ago. And we finally hit a moment where they were willing to back it. So Dynamite almost never does create her own stuff. But the reason I told you the story is the artist on it is Dave Acosta, who I've worked with a million times and who I love like a brother. And my father was the commander of an M8 armored car, a Greyhound armored car, which was the main reconnaissance vehicle of the United States Army, or literally at the time was the United States Cavalry, 20th Armored Division in Northern Europe. And I found a die-cast model of it on Amazon and sent him one the other day.
Ah,
Because like I can send him all the pictures in the world, but I love that it's 1/48th scale, so it's probably about this big.
yeah.
And I love that he can now like he can set it at any angle and draw it.
That's a
Like
great
it,
idea for drawing
you
cars. I never
know,
thought of that. That's a great
I
idea.
have done that. I wrote when I was writing a Betty Page in England. I needed a close up of a British secret agent thumbing the safety off on a Walther PPK. And I couldn't find a picture of it online. From making independent films for my entire adult life, I have a suitcase in storage full of replica guns from making low budget action movies. So I literally went to storage, found the Walther PPK, and just like took a picture of my hand on the with my thumb operating the safety because it's
Wow.
like I don't know how to fucking describe this, and I can't find a picture of it online. You never see Connery take the safety off the PPK in a
No,
Bond
I guess
movie.
not.
So,
Yeah.
you
Safety's
know,
always off, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
he's not put the safety on that gun.
of all the
That is
bonds,
not
I
a
think
thing he's
Connor
done.
would be the one that definitely would leave it off at all times. So,
Yeah. So all that to say, like, I believe in giving the artist all the tools you can possibly give them to succeed and to not waste a minute of their life. Because I know what I had in mind. They don't.
mm,
And why make them guess?
yeah.
And I'm a big believer in historical accuracy.
Hmm.
I think that even people who don't know a thing about history, I think you kind of know when something's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like it feels right
Hmm.
and you go with it rather than going, I've never seen a guy wear a hat like that in a World War II movie. That's odd. Why would they dress like that? You know what I mean? Like even if you don't know, you kind of pick things up by osmosis. So I try to do everything I can to not throw the audience off.
Yeah.
I always say in film, in comics, in anything, you have failed when the audience asks a question you do not want them to ask, or
That's a
you
really
can
good line.
answer,
Yeah.
or you're not about to answer for them.
Yeah.
If they
Yeah.
ask, why did the character do that, and you don't answer it, they're mad
Yeah.
and they've
I
given
come
up.
from a world of theater as well, and that's a question often like the director when the actor is like, what's my like, why would I do this or why would he do that? And then the director can't answer. I'm like, oh, like, that's you have to think about it enough to understand where someone's going, right, or what they're doing.
Yeah.
But
And and that's I would say that in acting, I completely understood this after I had been editing movies for only a year, 2 years. 99.9999999% of bad acting is the actor does not understand the intent
mm,
of the line.
hmm
People know how human beings talk.
yeah,
Bad actors know how human beings talk. When they say a line wrong, it's because they don't know what the writer was thinking and they don't know what the words mean. And they don't,
hmm
and look, a lot of times that a bad script, it's very hard to act in a bad movie.
hmm
It's very hard to make because your job is to make it work
hmm
and to convey it in such a way that the audience is like, oh, sure, I get it. And the number of times I saw bad line readings in movies while I was looking at footage, I could always tell the writer is being ironic and the actor is being earnest
yeah,
because writers are ironic and actors are earnest as a general rule.
yeah. Like an actor's not going to approach a material and the first time and assume that it's all tongue in cheek, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously, unless it's expressly stated in the script, you know.
Yeah, I wrote the first movie I wrote that was produced. I ghost wrote an Andy Sidaris movie called Hard Hunted, and I had just seen Raising Arizona, and we were shooting in Arizona, or not just seen. It'd been like 3 years earlier, but it was a huge impact on me.
Oh, really? It's a
And there
really
was,
funny thing. I host a movie night at a local bar here in town. We are showing that
Mhm.
movie tonight.
It's the greatest.
It's
But
fantastic. I can't believe it's their second movie, like right after Blood Simple. It's
yeah,
insane.
it is insane. So
Yeah.
there's a scene where the director had wanted to do a scene where two Playboy playmates, all of the actresses in his films are Playboy playmates, in bikinis, are riding a red dune buggy through the spires of Sedona Park, and they're being chased by a little black autogyro. You know, like Little Nelly from You Only Live Twice.
Was
Little
Russ
toy
Meyer
helicopter.
the director of this film?
No, but Andy,
Okay.
if you look up Andy Sedaris, he's like the inheritor of Russ Meyer.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's firing rockets at them, which is an
Okay.
absurd set of circumstances
Yeah.
in any world. I had written two Arizona cops behind a billboard, and they see the dune buggy and the helicopter go by. And having just seen Raising Arizona or loved Raising Arizona, I wrote this in them incredibly dry, deadpan. It comes by, and the one guy says to the other one, "Well, now there's something you don't see every day."
Mm.
Just like, the
Yeah.
most like unexcited, like, huh?
Yeah.
Playboy
Yeah.
Playmates in a dune buggy being chased by an autogyro that's firing rockets at them. I don't see something like that every day.
Yeah.
And the director, I was not on set when they shot it, and the director had the guy go, "Damn, there's something you don't see every day." That's not funny
No.
because it is something you don't like. What was funny is the guy being really like, "Huh, how about that?"
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
Arizona, like,
Yeah.
uh, but
Not
directed
nonplussed.
wrong. All the comedy of it went away, and it
Yeah.
was just this flat thing.
You must see
Um,
that a lot though, like in especially being involved in the film industry. Like it must
oh
be
yeah,
like writers. I often like me and a guy that we're talking on the show a little while ago about how we thought I said like cinematographers, editors are like people that aren't really appreciated enough in the film industry. I mean, writers, directors for the usually get the first and foremost, but I mean writers obviously too. But so many writers must sit there and watch, especially ones that are on a level where they get to be on set and and have
yeah,
input into how it's directed. But to watch them misinterpret your work's got to
yeah.
be
No,
really
it's
tough.
it's tough, and and you like it when an actor says, "What am I saying? What am I
Yeah.
mean?" One of the best actors I ever worked with. I made this little goofy martial arts movie in '97 called Kick of Death. Please don't look it up on Amazon and watch it. Um,
I feel like I have to now.
but I worked with an actor who wasn't the most book smart guy in the world, but he's the best actor in the movie. And before every scene, he would ask me, like the words didn't actually mean that much to him. He would just say to me before every scene, "Dave, what am I thinking about in this scene? What am I trying to do? And what am I thinking about?" And I would say, "Well, you're trying to convince him to join your underground fighting ring, and you're thinking about how much money you can make." And then you watch the shot, and his eyes are fairly glittering with greed. Like you can just, it's coming off of him in waves because he's thrown away the words. The words
Yeah.
aren't what he's concentrating on.
It's the
He's
intent.
concentrating on what the guy is thinking.
Yeah.
And actually, that's good acting when
Yeah.
you are portraying thought. And another reason you get bad acting is bad writing. I always say, and any actor will tell you this, and I also do act sometimes. Um, Terrible dialogue is impossible to memorize. It's the hardest thing in the world because great dialogue, there's a reason why we can all do Hamlet's soliloquy.
Mhm.
As complex as the language is, every thought builds on the previous thought. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Everything connects to the next thing.
Mhm.
And as you finished one sentence, you go, "What's the next thought?" "Oh, the fear of death makes us cowards."
Yeah.
Got it. Like we don't take action, because we're afraid of the consequences. Got it. And that makes us put up with all this shit. Here's a list of the shit we put up with. Because, who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the proud man's contumely, the insolence of office, all of that. What's next is
Yeah.
always in your mind. And it's great writing is the easiest thing in the world because, and you can learn. I learned a lot about writing from Abe Lincoln.
Really?
I was
Just the
looking at his
speeches?
speeches once and I went, especially for public speaking, his speeches we all think of him with soaring rhetoric, but so much of it is I'm going to say a really simple thing, and then I'm going to say another simple thing that continues that thought, and then I'm going to say the next simple thing that explains the previous thought, and it's all brilliant, and it builds in this brilliant way, you know. And there's poetry in the imagery and in the words, but like anyone can listen to the Gettysburg Address and you ask them what's it about, and it's really obvious what's it about. And anyone listening to it would go, oh, all of these people died because we're not together on the idea of human beings are all equal.
Mm.
And this is a threat to this new form of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if we don't come together on this, this government can't exist.
Mm.
And it's very simple, but he lays it out really like the sentences are actually pretty short. They're pretty to the point. And that's, you know, particularly when you're trying to express something complicated, to use simple words and then a little poetry.
It's
Simple
funny.
words and a little poetry. Like it's very interesting.
I was doing. I'm a big fan of Sam Fuller, and I
Sure.
was
Me too.
looking at his films, and I read one of his books. He wrote a book called Brainquake, like years ago. They
Hmm.
re-released in those yellow is it hard case? I think they're called those
Yeah.
little book series. So I read it, and it's a great noiry, pulpy story. But same with his films too. Like nothing is overly complicated, nothing is flowery, but it's very human because it's very natural.
Hmm.
And and it's just very to the point, and
I
sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like I keep threatening to do this, and someday I will have the time and the research ability to do it right. But there's a it's too much to call it a movement in art, but there is a style that is exemplified by uh, Jack Kirby in comics, Sam Fuller in movies, and by my father in Pulp Fiction,
Hmm.
that I call it's sort of New York veteran surrealism, which
Yeah.
is because Kirby, Fuller, and my dad all served in Europe during World War II.
Hmm.
They were all New Yorkers. They all came back to New York City and started working in the arts. And though Sam eventually went out to Hollywood, but there's a style to it of it's not just brutality and realism, because that's Mickey Spillane.
Hmm.
That's not what Dad and Kirby and Fuller, they experienced the oddness of the world,
Hmm.
the black comedy of the world. And all three of those guys, and I'm talking about Kirby Unbound. I'm not talking about Kirby Lee. I'm
Hmm.
talking about Kirby
Oh yeah,
writing.
fourth world and all that stuff.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about Fourth World. I'm talking about Commandy. I'm talking
Yeah.
about OMAC,
Yeah.
even the Eternals to a certain degree. But all three of those guys grab you by the lapels and shout a story in your face.
Hmm.
They go like, I'm going to entertain you. But
Yes.
there's an element of the strange and the bizarre and the
Hmm.
uncanny. You know, Naked Kiss is David Lynch 40 years before David Lynch.
Hmm.
You know, he invents the genre of small town America is strange and it's evil, and
Yeah.
there is evil behind those suburban houses. And and the hero is a bald prostitute. That's the person that's going to save us all. The hero is a pickpocket.
Yeah.
That's who's going to save us from the commies.
Yeah.
A low down, slimy pickpocket. That's
Even
what's going to save the world.
so Underground USA I watched recently. I was like, whoa, like
Yeah.
what a it's a harsh movie. But it's
Yeah.
so you're right though. Like I never put that together, but the idea of these I'm sure there's probably a documentary or a book somewhere about these people that came out of World War II and became writers. Like
Yeah.
Vonnegut too. Like I love his stuff. His would be a
Vonnegut is,
little more subtler than those guys, but
well, yeah, I don't add Vonnegut. Vonnegut is the surrealism
yeah,
without the pulp
that's
sense.
true.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he doesn't have the same pulp sensibility, the same, I'm going to tell you a propulsive,
yeah.
simple, explosive, forward moving story. Vonnegut, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
actually, I would say Vonnegut and Spillane are the poles
Oh yeah.
outside of that narrow group of guys
But there's
doing it.
like a dark appreciation for how weird and disturbing
Yeah,
and kind of funny even the dark parts are in a strange
yeah,
way, you know? And it's like the
yeah, and
most human thing to look at all of it and think it's kind of funny, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, and that dark humor
yeah.
is part of it.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I think, and the overlap in some ways is my dad actually wrote the novelization of Shock Carter.
Oh, really?
He
Wow.
actually
I
got
would
to
love to
adapt.
read that. That's amazing.
I mean, you'd have to find it used somewhere. It's been out of print since they reprinted it in the 90s. A French publisher. There was a brief like Sam Fuller resurgence in the
Yeah.
early 90s, late 80s.
That's when he went to
And
Paris, I think, wasn't it? After he
yeah,
did White Dog and
and
then yeah.
someone actually it was an English publisher because it was in English, reprinted Shock Carter for the first time in, 30 years,
Interesting.
25 years.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's the overlap between the two of them. But it's just there's something specific. Some college professor did a dissertation on my dad once, and he kind of said, like, when you read Avallone, there's this question in your mind of like, does this guy who grew up poor in the Bronx, never finished college, and went to World War II, does he even know he's Franz Kafka with a Colt 45, or is it like a complete, or is it an accident, or does it not matter?
Hmm.
Really, if he stumbles backwards into writing avant-garde private detective novels just because he's a weirdo? Does it matter if he knows where he sits in the history of the art form?
Yeah,
You
well,
know
how
what I
much
mean?
intent did Kafka like? You know what I mean? Like, how much
Right.
intent do you think to be weird those guys were? It's just what
Right.
they were.
It's
They
just
weren't like, I'm going to write a
rewriting.
weird ass story. It's just this is how they
Yeah.
write.
Yeah. It's this is how I see the world. This is what, in the case of these three guys, this is what World War II did to my mind. This is how I see good and evil.
Mm,
This is how I see the world. I grew up in New York City, but then I went out and saw the wider world. And what I saw was apocalypse.
mm,
What I saw was evil. What I saw was destruction on a massive scale. And it leads to and again, those are three artists who are three of the most influential on me for obvious reasons.
mm.
But but yeah, like I think it's easy to read my dad, particularly his early books, and sort of hand wave away as like, oh, that's just him trying to come up with a gimmick that makes him different from Mickey Spillane. But it is really, in one of his early books, Ed Noon gets asked, get his client is an 8-year-old girl who's worried that her father killed her mother. His first client is a 6'3" woman. His second story is about a pair of twins, one of whom is a murderer. And I love the way the twins book, which has the great title, The Spitting Image,
Mm.
um, the solution of that mystery is sort of right there in the character names, and I
Yeah.
love how obvious it is. The Wexler twins, one of whom may have committed a murder that someone witnessed, are April and June. Who do you think the surprise murderer is in that book? Is there something missing between April and June that also happens to be a woman's first name? You
Yes.
know, like I mean, it's great, but it's so, he does not buy, he didn't make it April and May and then the killer is named June. He could
Yeah.
have done that, but he leaves the gap.
He gave you a breadcrumb that you could follow if you
Yeah,
wanted to.
he made the gap between. Anyway, that's the guy who told me, uh, who told me bedtime stories when I was a kid, and by the way, the comic is not it's fictionalized to a degree that should be obvious, but the main character in it is Michael Avallone telling his
Mm.
son David a bedtime story. Uh,
That's
to
awesome.
help the artist out, I told him Michael is the 40-year-old man telling the 45-year-old man telling bedtime stories. Mike is the 20-year-old man fighting in Northern Europe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
when you
that's
read a
yeah.
description, Mike is the guy with the machine gun. Michael is the suburban dad.
I was
Just you know,
I was just looking to see how many of your dad's books I might have had because I have a few of them.
sure,
Did he write the adaptation for Friday the 13th Part 3?
he did indeed.
Okay, I just bought that recently. I found it at a used sale somewhere. I didn't look at the
That's
author,
a
but
very, very valuable book.
really?
Though,
Oh.
to be clear, there are two. That is a weird ass thing. There are two adaptations, novelizations of that movie.
Oh, I'll have to check which one I have. Mine, I think, has the
One of
knife coming
them,
through the shower curtain. I think is the one.
that's the other one, I
Oh,
believe.
is it? Oh, crap. Okay.
And that one's cheaper
Yeah.
usually. That's the guy who directed and wrote that movie got mad that they let someone else write the novelization. So
Really?
after he made the
Wow.
fourth, he also wrote and directed the fourth one, and then he went back and wrote novelizations for number three and number four.
Didn't Zito direct the fourth one?
I can't, I
Frank Zito?
honestly,
Yeah.
I don't remember the names of everybody
Okay.
involved in it. But
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
it's written by someone who was writing the movies. He went back and went, no, I should have written the novelization for this. And I gotta say, I didn't know that story. And when I saw the novelization in a used bookstore and picked it up and it didn't have my dad's name on it, I was like, what parallel universe did this thing? Because that is not a thing that happens.
No, no, not at all. That's
Sam
wild.
Fuller did not go out and write a novel of Shock Carter because he was offended that dad wrote Shock
No,
Carter. You know,
no.
it's not a thing. So
What
it's
I
like,
love is that there's someone that like because there's a time period where those novelizations seem kind of not disposable, but like there's you know what I mean. Like the director, they were kind of worlds apart. Like I'm a big fan of Gremlins. You can probably tell by the Gremlin over there, and
sure.
I have like the adaptation, the book adaptations of them, and there's stuff in them that aren't in the movies. Like, and I
Sure.
remember Joe
Well,
Dante said before, like I wish I'd known he was going to put that in the books because I probably would have added to the movie. It's cool
well,
stuff.
that's the thing you never
So
know is sometimes it's the novelist improving on the script, and sometimes it's something from a first draft. Hello, kid.
yeah, it's Lebowski. He
Uh,
like the Coen brothers too. Eh?
yeah.
They're the best.
And sometimes it's, like I said, sometimes it's something from a first draft that then got dropped.
Yeah.
Uh, my favorite is Dad did the adaptation of the Cannonball Run.
Oh, really?
Okay, you remember the plot line where Roger Moore was actually a Jewish kid who believed he was Roger Moore and looked, of course, like Roger Moore and was played by Roger Moore.
Uh-huh.
And they had a scene where he meets with his elderly Jewish mother,
Uh-huh.
and that scene's in the movie. Dad ended the book with a final chapter where Roger Moore calls his little old Jewish mother and says, "I didn't win the race, but I'm gonna stay out here and do a second race when they start another one." And she hangs up the phone and she's stroking a white cat in her lap. And she turns to a man in the room and says, "Kill him." He wrote a surprise ending where Roger Moore's mom is actually Blofeld. And
That's
they dropped it.
awesome.
They cut it out of the book, and he was
Ah.
so disappointed. He's like, "Come on, that's really fucking funny."
Oh, that's adorable. That's
Um,
amazing.
I think they
Well,
might have been in the original screenplay. It was about a guy who believed he was James Bond and drove an Aston Martin DB5, and the Broccolis reached out and said, "No, you don't.
yeah.
Roger Moore is not playing a guy who thinks he's James Bond in your movie." So they made it a guy who believes he's Roger Moore. And I think the publishers and the producers may have gone, that's asking for trouble. Adding the white cat Blofeld scene
Yeah.
at the end of
A
the
little
book
too close.
is a little too
I
cool. But I thought that was one of his funniest novelization stories.
I get a real kick into stuff like that. It's dumb, but there's this old TV show called The Master with Lee Van
Mhm.
Cleef where he was like
I remember.
do you remember that show? Yeah, so I
I
was
watched
rewatching.
it.
Yeah, they re-released it on like some Blu-ray set and it was cheap in a bin somewhere. I collect I'm a big movie person as you can see. I have other rooms full of movies too. But and then there's an episode where there's like an old like MI6 agent that he ran afoul of back in his ninja days that he reconnects with, and he's played by George Lazenby. And they don't really give him a
Yeah.
name, and it's very
Yeah.
tongue-in-cheeky Bond, but not enough to be Bond, right?
Yeah. They
So
did that in the Man from Uncle reunion movie.
right,
Lazenby also played James Bond in that.
right.
There's a chase scene through Vegas where Napoleon Solo is being chased by someone, and a guy shows up in an Aston Martin DB5 and kills the guy chasing Napoleon Solo, and it's George Lazenby.
Give him a little nod.
And they just don't say it. They just make it obvious. And
Yeah.
I love that kind of joke. That's, That's fan. It's going back to Philip Jose Farmer. Everybody likes to believe that it's all interconnected. It's all real. You put the overlaps in it and all of that.
Well,
Hell,
comics has a lot of that.
Alan Moore won't stop making those books about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, comics like it's interesting. As comics does that a lot. They play with continuity and say this is always that way, or this is you don't remember it right. Here's the redo of Superman's origin. Like this is how it happened this time, and they reconnect things that way. It must have been interesting in the early days when like everything was kind of on its own little islands, and they started putting it all
Yeah,
together and making it work.
yeah.
I mean, some of them
But
had
even going back, we were still doing things in the uh
yeah,
that the
they made a
Green
Jetsons Flintstones crossover. Like, how does that
yeah
make sense? But they just found a way to make it work, right?
that the you know but the I but like all the way back in however long ago that character comes from, like they made the Green Hornet
Right,
the great grandnephew of the Lone Ranger.
right.
Like where people are always trying to connect.
And then he shows up in Batman too. They put him in the
Yeah,
'66 Batman show that a crossover episode.
yeah. No, and again, we love that stuff. That stuff is always fun. It's fun in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Mm.
Um, I actually contributed to, there are those the books breaking down. My friend Jess Nevins writes these books that break down every panel of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen
Oh, really?
for every reference
Wow, that's
in
got to be
it.
exhausting.
And when he did the 1950s one, which was the James Bond one, he actually crowdsourced it. He put it online. This is how we became friends. And he said, "Hey, anyone catches anything I missed, please tell me." And two of the ones that I caught were actually connections that Alan Moore made simply because the British film industry is not that big and the same actors play various parts in various movies.
Yeah.
So in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I think it's the third volume, fourth volume, M is Harry Lime from The Third Man,
Mm.
right? The
Yeah,
Orson Welles villain from The
yeah,
Third
yeah,
Man.
yeah,
And I said, what you didn't catch is that Bernard Lee, who played M, is a British intelligence military policeman in The Third Man and gets murdered by Harry Lime.
yeah,
I think Alan Moore is trying to tell us that Harry Lime didn't get killed,
yeah,
that he murdered Bernard Lee, took his uniform,
yeah.
took his place, and
Became it.
rose through the ranks and became the head of British intelligence.
That's awesome.
And that's a funny inside joke. And there's a background panel where Q Department is taking apart Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And in the
Yeah,
foreground, there's an old man with a droopy mustache
yeah,
that Q is talking to, or one of the Q branch guys is talking to. And I said, here's the amazing thing about that image. The guy with the droopy mustache is the British character actor Lionel Jeffries.
mhm,
Lionel Jeffries played the uncle of Caractacus Potts, who invents Chitty Chitty Bang Bang
mhm.
in the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But he's also Dr. Caver, who invents Cavorite in From the Earth to the Moon, or First Men in the Moon,
Yeah,
the H.G. Wells adaptation.
yeah,
And Dr. Caver is a minor character, but a pivotal one in the first League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So
yeah,
it's like just using Lionel Jeffries there is connecting a couple of dots and saying maybe Chitty Chitty Bang Bang flies because Caractacus Potts' uncle was
yeah,
Dr. Caver, who gave him Cavorite, which would keep a flying car in the air because
yeah.
it's like an anti-gravity element.
It's
But
got to
it's like,
be.
I love
Ex
that shit,
yeah,
and
me
it's
too.
hilarious, and it's detailed. But you know that Alan, I am not overestimating Alan Moore at all. He absolutely was making that connection.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, if
Yeah,
anybody would catch that or make those things, it'd be him, 100%. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, growing up with a famous father as well, who is a writer, influenced you to become a writer. I'd assume. Like, I don't assume he sat down and said, "Son, someday you will do what I do."
I think it actually, in some ways, it had the opposite effect in
Really?
that I grew up wanting to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I worked in film for years and years and years. And I think I always kind of undervalued the writing. Not that I undervalue writing, but like in myself,
Mm,
as like my value as an artist is as a film director, as a
mm.
maker of films. And I have made films and I continue to make films. And I'm writing something right now that I hope to make in the next year or two. But I actually think I should have leaned into it more.
Mm.
when I was younger. I don't have any regrets. I've had a fascinating career. I've done a lot of crazy shit, and it was all worth doing. But it really wasn't until 2014 when I got my first comics job that I leaned into writing. And honestly, the first 2 years of writing comics, I was still mostly making films and editing films. And around 2016, 2017, I said to my wife, I think I'm undermining my writing career, which I love, by continuing to pursue film editing jobs, which I have fallen out of love with. I still love directing, but the problem solving and the storytelling aspect of editing, which drew me to it, had started to get old
Mm.
for me. I got a little tired of other people's footage. I
Hmm.
got a little tired of telling other people's stories. And I was like, this, even when I'm writing Red Sonja, who I did not create, even when I'm writing Elvira, they're my stories that
Mm.
I'm telling. I'm writing the dialogue. I'm describing the panels. Uh, I love working with artists. It's a collaboration that is very similar to me. Like your artist is basically your cinematographer and your lead
Yep.
actor rolled into one. I still feel like I'm the director. There are artists who would vehemently Howard Chaykin would thank me for saying that out loud.
Well,
But I think people do it in different ways. And I am not writing Marvel style. I am not telling Jack Kirby, give me 24 pages of Fantastic Four. Just give me 24 pages with Galactus. You know, see you at the end
yes,
of the week, Jack.
I was going to
Hey,
mention
who's
that to
this
you,
guy
like
on the
the.
surfboard? I love it. Let's make action figures. You're not getting a dime. Like I'm not that guy.
Mm.
I'm pouring a lot of myself into this stuff.
Yeah.
But that I think having a father who was a writer made me edge away in some ways from being a writer and from
Mm.
identifying myself primarily as a writer. Um, and it's funny, I will notice it always kind of shocks me when you read a review of a movie, presumably written by someone who considers himself a writer, and they identify it entirely as the director's movie.
Mm.
When someone who thinks of themselves as a writer identifies Psycho as Robert Bloch's Psycho, or excuse me, as the Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, I'm like,
Yeah.
excuse me, that is Robert Bloch's Psycho,
Hmm.
adapted by Stefano.
Hmm.
Um, that is, it ain't all Robert. I know how Hitchcock worked in story conferences. Ernest Lehman talks about it in his book on screenwriting. And it's certainly very involved. It's certainly very hands-on, but he's not writing a single line of dialogue. You
No.
know, he's not designing the whole thing. Not really. I remember one of the first glimpses I had of that, and I was right. In 1980, they released a book that was the screenplay for The Empire Strikes Back,
Oh, yeah.
illustrated with storyboards. And I remember looking at Joe Johnson's storyboards specifically and going, man, that looks exactly like the finished film. Like the guys in the special effects department were literally just, how did Joe Johnson frame this? Okay, okay,
Yeah.
let's get that exactly right. And I went, this Joe Johnson character probably should be directing movies.
He went
That
on to
was
do
a
so.
that was a good call by 15-year-old me.
Yeah.
Joe Johnson should absolutely be directing more movies. Should be directing all the movies. He's fantastic.
He has such a
But
pulp
like,
sensibility too.
oh yeah.
So
But that was the first time I went, oh, this George Lucas isn't a stage magician. He's
no.
not putting his hand in a hat and pulling out Star Wars. His wife is making the first movie great. Actors, Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford are rewriting all of their dialogue
Mhm.
by
Yeah.
the second movie to make it work. I mean, and I love Lawrence Kasdan, but Lawrence Kasdan did not write I Love You, I Know. He
Mhm.
wrote a shitty, shitty line of dialogue for that moment. She says, I love you. And he says, well, you better remember that because I'm coming back. Oh, baby, no.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
But that's a
Han
beautiful
Solo's not going to say that.
commentary on like the collaborative nature of film because you're right, that
Yeah.
doesn't get mentioned. Like nobody says like, oh well, hey, like I do dinner theater as well. We're in one now that like one of the cast members writes it, but it's generally like a very bare bones thing. And we add a lot of the fun to it. Right. But then, you'll watch people come up and be like, oh, this is great, great script. And like, and in your head, you're like, all the stuff that most people are like really into are
Yep.
kind of the things that we all brought to it and added to it.
And when
So,
you're and when you're a real one, as the
mm,
kids say, you acknowledge that.
yeah,
Tina Fey won her Emmy for one episode of 30 Rock, the one with Carrie Fisher,
yeah.
ironically enough. She knew the one line of dialogue in that episode that everybody fucking loved, that probably won it the Emmy, was not a line of dialogue she had written. And
Mm.
I can't remember the name of the writer. Let's just call him John Smith. But she's like, I want to thank this, and I want to thank this, and I want to thank John Smith for reminding me that you never follow a hippie to a second location.
Yeah.
She basically said, you're giving me the Emmy for this, but the one fucking line that you all are going to quote to me at the after party, John Smith.
Nice. Yeah.
A friend of mine, lovely man named Carl Gottlieb, wrote Jaws.
Mhm.
And if you meet Carl Gottlieb and say, oh my God, we're going to need a bigger boat, he will say to you, Roy Scheider improvised that when he saw the shark for the first time. And we all thought it was fucking hilarious. And I said, Stephen, we should really, that is absolutely what Chief Brody says when he sees the shark for the first time. That's what Roy Scheider said when he saw the shark for the first time. It's fucking gold. And he should say it.
That's
And
awesome.
part of the genius, of course, is that Spielberg and Carl Gottlieb go, oh, that's going in the movie.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is
And
the,
even that movie alone, with all the issues with the shark and all the changes they
oh,
made, and
yeah.
make the movie better. Like, honestly, your friend Carl should get kudos in all of the world, because there's very few movies that are better than the book. And I'll
Oh, yeah.
testify inherently that Jaws as a film is much better. When I was a kid, I read Jaws the book, and I was like, what? Brody's wife is sleeping with Hooper? I'm
Yeah.
like, and although the one thing I did think was interesting was the mafia subplot about how like the mayor owed money to the mafia, which is why you need to keep the beaches open to make the money to pay them back. So at least that
Yeah,
explained
but
why the mayor was in such a dink. But aside from
it's,
that, there was a lot more going on than was really
look,
necessary.
I also don't think The Godfather is a very good book. It's got great stuff in it,
Yeah.
but it's also just, there's some subplots. The vaginoplasty subplot in that book is fucking insane. And you're like, what is this doing in here? We're going to waste a couple of chapters on James Bond's dick is too big for this lady. Holy shit. And my two favorite moments in book adaptations, one is from a great book and one is from a mediocre book.
Mhm.
Goldfinger is not one of the better James Bond novels.
Mhm.
And I think the greatest moment in screenplay adaptation is when they sit down and have a mint julep in the movie,
Mhm.
and Connery recounts the plot of the book, and Goldfinger says, no, that's stupid. We're not doing that. Like, that's the funniest way a writer has ever said the book has some really dumb shit in it.
Yeah, that's really good.
Because, I've run some numbers on my own, Goldfinger. It would take 20 men with 200 trucks, 3 days, and you're going to have at most 3 hours before the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines comes and make you put it back. And Gert Frobe goes, who said anything about taking the gold?
Yeah.
And you go, oh, we're not, and just a character in the movie literally saying, yeah, plot of the book is dumb. We're not doing it. And the other genius one, because that thing I said about never make the audience ask a question that you can't answer. Philip Marlowe is over 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart is maybe 5'8".
Yeah.
On a good day in lifts, he's maybe 5. The first line that Carmen Sternwood says to him when she sees him in the lobby in The Big Sleep is, "You're very tall, aren't you?" And he says, "I try not to be." Good line. Funny line. You can't give that line to someone looking at Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
You can't. Even though she's significantly shorter than him, she's probably 5 foot nothing.
Yeah.
But she walks up to him and says, "You're not very tall, are you?" And he says, "I try to be."
Yeah.
That's a brilliant, it's still the joke. We didn't throw out Chandler's good flirty joke.
Yeah.
We made it a different joke about how short Humphrey Bogart is.
That's beautiful.
And Bogart didn't have an ego, thank God, that made him go, We're not making a joke about how short I am in the first scene in the picture, but God, like I won't do it. A lot of actors, I don't know that Tom Cruise is going to sit still for you're not very tall, are you?
Yeah.
Or Mel Gibson, two very short men.
Yep.
And I say that as someone who is their height.
Mhm.
But, you know, that's the finding the way to do that is the real genius of adaptation of like how can we maintain what was cool here?
Mhm.
And in the book Goldfinger, it's a friggin' silent movie. The laser is a silent movie log splitting buzzsaw
Mhm.
that they put
Oh.
him on. And it's just and the funny thing is, I can't remember the guy's name, but the screenwriter, one of the screenwriters of Goldfinger, Paul Dane, could not crack that scene. And I think his story is he asked his bitchiest gay friend for a joke, and he came up with, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die."
Great
And
line.
Dane, oh, that's gold.
Yeah.
That's going in the picture,
Yeah.
you know.
That's
But
gold.
that's the fascinating thing about it being, and it doesn't come up as much. I don't have artists suggesting dialogue that much, but I did a comic called Shape of Elvira,
Mhm.
which was a satire of Shape of Water. And the gag is that the Guillermo del Toro director has captured a real Brazilian river monster, and the movie is a subtext to get it to mate with Elvira and produce,
So
and
Del
produce
Toro's
a
a character
human.
in it?
Yeah,
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 that's
Elvira's the
awesome.
main character in it. I write the
Yeah.
Elvira comics for
Oh yeah,
Dynamite.
but Del Toro himself is a character in it that's trying to get
No, no,
himself.
I
Oh,
made
okay.
him the guy's name is I made him a white guy named
An analog.
Billy
Oh yeah.
Bullworth.
Yeah.
I maintained the Toro aspect by
Oh
making him
yes.
Bullworth. But what he says to Elvira is your co-star is very method. You'll never see him out of the costume. He's always going to talk with that weird bubbly voice, whatever. And there's a scene where two agents of Fish and Wildlife
I gotta
pull,
read this.
pull her over and say, "Look, it's not some method actor in the suit. It's a real Brazilian monster." And she's like, "No, it's not. It's like," and she lists like three famous method actors, and they're all doing something else. And one of them was Christian Bale. And I have the agent say, "Oh no, he's appearing on Broadway in the musical version of American Psycho," which I think was like Psycho with an exclamation point. And the letterer, Taylor Esposito, really great letterer who has lettered most of my comics, said, "Don't you think that should be Bateman Begins?" And I went, "Holy shit, that is so good. That is such a better joke than I came up with." So I
Yeah.
used it and credited him with every interview that I did. I said the funniest line in the book is actually Taylor Esposito coming up with Bateman Begins for the American Psycho
But
musical starring Christian Bale.
that's perfect. What's perfect is that like genius and people that work in this stuff, they have to understand it's collaborative and they have to remove the ego from it to understand that sometimes somebody ask everybody, talk to everybody, talk to the grip, talk to whoever, somebody shoots you something that's a good idea,
Exactly.
accept it. Don't just like
The
dismiss
job
it because it's not yours.
the job is knowing where the good joke comes
Yeah.
from
And
and
making a final
knowing
good
where the
product.
good. I don't know if you saw Soderbergh's Solaris, but in
No,
the
I've been meaning to, but
it's very good.
I found the
Uh,
original a little not I like
it's
it, but
slow.
it's yeah. So
It's
I don't
slow.
imagine it's the same, but I'm
No, it's
interested.
varied. It's like 90 minutes long. It's the
Okay.
opposite
Huh.
of Tarkovsky Solaris. But there's a thing in it that George Clooney does in the first scene and then the last scene that basically pays off the science fiction premise of the movie. I won't say what it is. It's not
Mhm.
important. But in the director commentary, Soderbergh says, "Now this thing that George is doing right here, when I wrote the script, I didn't have this. And I didn't think the movie worked. And I didn't know how to make it work. And George came up with this in rehearsals. I don't know how the movie works without this thing that George came up with in rehearsals. It's brilliant. I love it. George saved the whole movie."
Wow.
And that, and again, Clooney is a talented director and
Yeah.
storyteller. So it's not shocking. I think it's funny that Harrison Ford understands that directing is more work than he ever wants to do, so he never wants to do it. But the man is a fabulous writer and director.
Yeah.
Because every time you hear about Harrison had an idea on the set, it's always like, oh, he is the author of the two moments that made him a movie star.
Yeah.
I Love You, I Know, and Shooting the Arab Swordsman in the
Yep.
Market are both Harrison Ford improvs.
Yep.
And those are the biggest moments in those movies for the audience.
Hmm.
And it's like, what can you say about a guy who's bringing you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And that
know?
just adds value to you as an actor. Like if you can bring stuff to incorporate to
Absolutely.
elevate the material or even elevate the film itself,
There's
and,
a there's a really funny artifact someone dug up from Alec Guinness's archives, a letter he wrote during the shooting of Star
this
Wars.
just says I hate Star Wars because he famously didn't like doing
No,
it.
it wasn't. I mean, he talks about how dreadful the dialogue is. He's like, everybody treats me like a fossil, you know, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
But he says he's talking about the cast and he calls out, there's this one interesting, languid fellow who's much smarter than he wants you to notice that he is.
Mhm.
And he's talking about Harrison Ford.
Wow.
He's like, there's this, and he's writing to an American friend. One of them is a countryman of yours. And I love it. He says this languid fellow, he's stoned.
Yeah.
Alex, that's why
Yeah.
he's languid.
Yes.
And just the observation that Harrison Ford is kind of pretending to be a regular guy when he's a sharp-brained intellectual, hiding behind his laid-back California regular guy
Yeah.
persona is that's pretty sharp-eyed of Alec to sort of go. And no shade to Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, but
Yeah.
I mean, Mark has said the same thing. That
Yeah,
as
I'm
Alec
sure.
goes, one of these people is a giant movie star.
Yeah.
You know, like one of these
can't
guys
remember-
is pretty interesting.
I can't remember who the actor was or director. Somebody in Hollywood was talking about how Harrison Ford was like a construction worker or something before.
Yeah.
And he also sold weed, I guess, on the side. And then like somebody went to go watch Star Wars and they're like, hey, that's the guy I buy my weed from. It was like
It's
so
Michelle Phillips of
Is
the
that-
Mamas and Papas.
That's who it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
She went
yeah.
to like a premiere of it, and the first time he appeared on screen, she said, "That's my pot dealer."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's amazing. Oh,
yeah.
well, I shouldn't keep you all day, but what do you have coming up? What are your any
What I
events,
have
books?
coming up, the very next thing that comes out is Altered States Warlord. No, is that right? No, Savage Tales. That's what we were supposed to talk about.
Okay.
Savage Tales, giant size. It's got 4 stories in it. A Alan Quatermain, a Red Sonja, a Vampirella, and a Gulliver of Mars, believe it or not.
Interesting.
And the Gulliver of Mars is part 4. I've been doing the Savage Tales for a few years now. And they always release them as specials. And the sort of flattering thing is it's an anthology book.
Mhm.
And it's supposed to be 4 different writers and artists. And it has slowly morphed into me and 4 different artists. So this
Yeah.
one is actually 2 of the stories are drawn by Mariano Benitez Chapo, who's great. So I wrap up the Gulliver of Mars story that I was telling. But I think you could read it as a standalone and get something out of it.
Mhm.
And little short 10-page story about Red Sonja that's set kind of during a fall of the Russian, sort of set during a Russian Revolution. Aristocrat hires her to sneak him out of town
Interesting.
as civilization is collapsing around them. A Vampirella about she finds out that there's a vampire working as a hitman for the mob. And she sets out to destroy him. And
Sounds like Innocent Blood a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
great
the
movie.
Alan Quatermain is an artist I've never worked with before named Sebastian Perez, who's great. Perez, maybe it's 2 eyes. And it's my usual deep dive into history and literature. And Alan Quatermain's hard to write because writing about Africa from a European perspective at the end of the 20th century
Yeah.
is a tough one. And I always try to get out of it and not write about colonialism in an even remotely positive way if I can. And to be fair, the Alan Quatermain books are actually pretty anti-colonialism, but it's a very thin line H. Rider Haggard is walking there. And doing my research, I got curious about World War One. And it turns out that in 1914, the colonies in Africa, as one of the characters in the book, in my story says, wanted to participate, decided it would be fun to participate in the madness going on in Europe. And German West South Africa launched a sort of half-hearted invasion of British South Africa. And so my story is about a platoon of German Schutztruppe, which were their colonial troops, who take over a crumbling abandoned ranch house. And it turns out it was Alan Quatermain's ranch
Yeah.
house, and he's none too pleased with German invaders on his soil.
That's
And
awesome.
he deals with them appropriately. And because I always have to go a little too far and too esoteric,
Hmm.
I don't know how many people will notice this, but the story actually begins on a British merchant ship in 1925. And the captain of the merchant ship is asking his first officer, "Did you see any action during the Great War? I know you spent a lot of time in Africa. Did you see any action down there?"
Yeah.
And the first mate says, "No, but he says, I commanded a patrol boat on the Orange River and we never saw any action. But we fished a fellow out of the water who had seen some action, a German Schutztruppe, and he told us this extraordinary story." And the captain says, "Well, I always enjoy your stories, Marlowe. Tell it." And he tells the story. Of course, Marlowe is the narrator of Heart of Darkness.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
it's another fun Africa story from
That's fine. You're making your
delightful.
own League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sort of
Yeah,
crossover. That's lovely.
exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a public domain narrator of cool, creepy stories out of Africa telling another creepy story out of Africa. And by the way, speaking of reference, as I was earlier, what saved my ass for the artist in that book is that um, the ranch house that the movie Out of Africa is set in 1914, 15, and 16, around then,
Hmm.
in British South Africa. So I was literally able to, and there's some website dedicated to movie tourism
Uh,
that has 1,000 pictures of the ranch house from Out of Africa.
wow.
And I sent that website and I said, "Good news. You don't have to imagine a plantation home, a ranch house in Africa in 1914. I got you.
Yeah.
Every room, every angle, every porch,
Wow.
all of it."
That's
So we
incredible.
had an easy reference for that.
Wow.
But I felt bad for the guy because I did have to hunt down what the uniform of the Schutztruppe were in 1914. That's pretty.
Yeah.
I think you actually see them in. I didn't even think of this. I think you see them in the African Queen, so I could have gone there, but I actually found some reference for it and all that. Anyway, those are the four stories in Savage Tales. That's coming out at the end of April. I think they all came out really well.
Hmm.
It's a 54-page comic.
Awesome.
They told me they wanted to do a long one, and I said that's good because I'd like to get to everything that I want to get to in the Gulliver of Mars story. I need more than 8 pages because they're
Hmm.
usually 8 pagers.
Yeah.
It's usually 4 8 pagers for 32 pages. This is 54. So I think the Sonya's 10. The I think it's the Sonya is 10, the Vampirella's 12 or 10, the Quatermain is 14, and the Gulliver is 16.
Hmm.
And like I said, I think they're all satisfying, interesting stories.
That's
And
awesome.
then the thing that I'm working on right now, which will probably be my next release after that, they just announced this last week, is called Altered States Warlords. And it's Altered States is Dynamite's branded version of What If
Hmm.
or Elseworlds.
Okay.
So it's they asked me to do a 4-issue series, involve at least 4 either public domain or Dynamite licensed characters, but they wanted it for whatever reasons, maybe commercial ones. I do not know. I did not ask. They wanted it all centered around Mars, which is why it's called, and particularly Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars.
Uh-huh.
So the first one is essentially Red Sonja, Warlord of Mars.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
and the idea is that, and this took some research, the Hyborian age that Conan and Red Sonja come from is 11,000 years ago.
Mhm.
So the first story takes place, or more so, the first story takes place in 10,000 BCE, and Red Sonja stumbles across an artifact that literally teleports her to Mars, and she has sort of a John Carter-like adventure.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
because the antagonists are, if you read the John Carter books, Mars has this religion about the afterlife, but it's a fraud.
Mhm.
Uh, and I speculated that 10,000, 12,000 years ago, that religion was just getting underway, and the Holy Therns were going across Mars trying to sell the idea
Oh, yeah. That's
of
cool.
the River of Death and Goddess Isis to Martians. And sort of the artifact that brings her to Mars is a Thurn artifact, and she ends up in one of their temples, runs afoul of them to say the least, and has to basically convince the Jadak of Helium, when it's still a small village,
Mhm.
no, these are bad people who are trying to kill you all and feed you to plant men and great apes and steal steal your gold. So that's the first adventure. The second one takes place in the year 1866, and it's John Carter comes to Mars. But how is it different being the second human on Mars
Mm.
when everyone in Helium venerates the great Red Sonja, the Jasumian who saved us from the Holy Therns, and then it's additive. The third one is Tarzan gets involved in some way. Still working on that. I
Perfect.
have some thoughts. And then in the final issue, a certain rocket ship from Draculon
So perfect.
stops at Barsoom on its way to Earth.
That's
I've
awesome.
always loved that. I am not, and as someone who writes a lot of horror, I should whisper this part, but
Hmm.
I am not a giant fan of the vampire
I was going to
genre.
ask you about your involvement with horror because, Elvira and some other stuff like that.
I I feel like horror exactly the way I feel about Westerns.
Mm,
A great one can be one of my favorite movies ever.
mm,
I loved Sinners.
mm.
There are plenty of horror movies I just adore.
Yeah,
My wife will go to see the worst horror movie ever made
yeah,
and have a good time.
yeah. I'm kind of
I
like that too.
I can't. Same thing with Westerns. Once Upon a Time in the West and High Noon are two of my favorite movies.
Mm,
But my dad could watch anything with a horse and a peacemaker
yeah,
and be satisfied. And I'm
yeah,
like, no, I kind of hate the writing in most of those movies. So the vampire genre, I'm not a big fan of. When
no.
done well, fantastic.
I like when someone takes something different with it, like the Vampirella
Yeah,
and the other planet, like even Life Force, where it's like that movie where it's kind of like
yeah.
it's an alien thing that's basically a
And
vampire. That's all
and
interesting.
that's what I love. It drives I hate to lay something that I don't like at the foot of a writer that I really admire,
Mm,
but I think Kurt Busiek is the one that rewrote her origin story to make her like the daughter of the devil or something. I'm like,
mm,
no.
yeah,
She's from an alien planet where they drink blood, man. That is the only thing that ever made her cool. When
yeah,
you try to give her an earthbound
yeah,
supernatural explanation, I am bored out of my mind.
yeah. And like
And
Dracula
when
is
I
such a
write
great name.
Vampirella, and this is true in the Savage Tales,
Yeah.
when I write Vampirella, the explanation for the fact, like sunlight has never particularly turned her into flame or anything like that,
Mm,
is that once upon a time, she's not the first person from Draculon to come to Earth.
mm,
And that the vampires in our popular media who burn in sunlight, who can be destroyed by Christian religious symbols, those are the half-breeds. That's what happens when
yeah.
when you mate a human with someone from Draculon, you get this Eastern European Romanian vampire
Mm.
breed that's garbage. Maybe Vlad the Third was from Draculon, but all the grandchildren of Vlad the Third are these garbage
Yeah.
vampires. Whereas Vampirella is from the planet Draculon and is not, you know,
Yeah,
is not susceptible. You can't kill her with a stake through the heart. She
that's
drinks holy water and laughs. Like she's not vulnerable the way vampires are because she's a fucking alien from a planet where they drink blood.
yeah,
Why would holy water do a thing to her? Like
yeah,
why would garlic bother her? She's
yeah.
not,
See, that's interesting to me. I like I remember I think it was that American Vampire comic. They kind of posit the concept that if you get the vampire, like you get bitten by a vampire and become one, depending on your ethnicity, what part of the world you're from, it changes the type of vampire you are. So the
that's
American one is different than the European one, and it's like
sure.
the first American one. I don't think sunlight hurts them. I think gold is like what hurts them instead. And there's
Interesting.
some other stuff to it. Like Stephen King, I think it was his idea, but then they'd taken it with these other writers and went off with it.
Well, and this is one of my least popular unpopular opinions is the entire Romero vampire the entire George Romero zombie version.
Mhm.
Those are just Richard Matheson's vampires from The Last Man on
Oh,
Earth.
100%. Yeah,
From
and even the movie The Last Man on Earth, yeah, based on the book,
is the
is
template
yeah, it's pre Night of the Living Dead. They're very
because
similar.
before then vampire zombies are the Haitian
Yep.
voodoo undead. They don't eat brains. Eating brains is just a variation on drinking blood. It's just eating humans done in a different way.
Yes.
Uh, and I don't mind, like when it's done well, again, I don't mind it, but I get bored with it very, very, very,
Hmm.
very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And something like The Walking Dead, I really love the first season, and then it just got further and further away from being a science fiction show about the apocalypse to basically being cowboys and Indians. And the
Hmm.
zombies are just an utterly replaceable horde. They're George Lucas's robots in The Phantom Menace. They're
Hmm.
just something you can kill without feeling bad about it over and over again by the millions. And it's just that's a boring premise to me. That
Well,
gets boring
it's
really, really fast to me.
I guess the concept it always just turns into the humans are the real monsters. Yes, I,
Exactly.
I agree, but you don't need 10 seasons to tell me that. Like in
Exactly.
12, like I get it. Like,
Exactly. I'm watching Paradise right now, and I kind of love the fact that in a couple of places where it could go, oh no, humans are the real problem here, and everybody in the post-apocalyptic world is going to be cruel and out for themselves, and no one's going to help you. I love that they undercut that every once in a while. And they're like, no, actually, this community of humans will try to save these people who are dying and in trouble,
yeah.
and we'll be kind to them, and we'll give them some of their supplies and send them on their way. Like that, it's not everyone in an
I
apocalyptic
agree.
time becomes a monster. You know, even George Miller knows better than that. Like there are still the communities of good people who are trying to help people.
Even The Road, which is probably one of the darkest, most dystopian books ever written, leaves you with a glimmer of hope that there are still going to be good people out there. Just
Yeah,
a glimmer. It's
yeah,
like
and
it's oddly enough the most hopeful thing that Cormac McCarthy probably ever
oh
written.
yeah,
But it's
and
glimmer.
one last thing about George Miller that I have
Yeah.
to mention every time I
Oh,
mention him
no, Miller's the best.
because I think it's the most brilliant. He is never said it out loud, and it only applies to 3 out of the 5 movies. But you know, he sort of famously pays no attention to canon and continuity.
Mhm.
I noticed when I saw Furiosa, I suddenly thought back and went, 3 out of 5 of these stories are told to us by people who were not present, did not witness half of what happened,
Mhm.
and in the case of the feral kid, was a pre-verbal 8-year-old who absolutely had no idea what was going on around him.
Mhm.
The girl from the crack in Thunderdome, we find out she's the one telling the story of Thunderdome.
Mhm.
How does she know any of the stuff that happened to Max in the first hour of that movie?
Mhm.
She wasn't there.
Mhm.
Max didn't tell her in the 20 minutes they were together, you know, or in the 2 days that they were in the
Yeah.
same space. The Mad Max saga is legends of the apocalypse about this dude named Max and now this woman. The guy who tells Furiosa story is the holy man
Yeah.
who witnesses 10% of it.
Yeah.
The rest of it he's making up, man.
Yeah. It's parable and
So of
legend.
course Of course, the details don't really mesh with each other, and the one Mad Max seemed to have a different set of memories than the Mel Gibson Mad Max. They're not the same guy.
Mhm.
Someone is saying, "Oh, we met this other guy with a cool car who wore a black leather jacket. Must have been Mad Max."
Yeah.
Just assuming it's the same Max. It's not Max Rokitansky is only the guy in the first three movies.
Mhm.
And even the guy in the second and third movies are someone else's memories of this guy they met when they were a child and when they were a teenager, and they're telling the story 30 to 50 years later. And that to me is a magical way to tell science fiction and
Mhm.
fantasy stories of like, hey man, if I would love to see someone do that with Star Trek. We do a Chris Pine story that completely violates all Star Trek continuity, but it's told by someone from the planet that the Enterprise visited.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is what we remember about Admiral James T. Kirk.
Yeah.
We remember him as being this guy. Scotty was skinny, not overweight. Like, we got all the details wrong
Yeah.
about the actual James T. Kirk and the actual Enterprise and the actual crew of the Enterprise. This is just a story someone told us
Yeah.
about James Bond, about Han Solo, about like I think that is the greatest way to approach genre storytelling. As much as I enjoy continuity. I enjoy working within continuity.
Mhm.
And I keep trying to tell myself, I'm writing the second issue of Altered States right now, that once Red Sonja changes everything and we're in a different timeline, I don't have to stick to anything
No, absolutely. You're
about
free.
Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars.
Nope.
TARDIS Mors is still the Jeddak of helium. Like, just as an example, and this is no spoiler, when he meets the Tharks for the first time, Tars Tarkas is the Jeddak.
Uh,
I don't need to explain why the other guy, the first guy that John Carter encounters from the books, is not the Jeddak and then replaced by Tars Tarkas.
yeah.
Turns out the Tharks have had an alliance with helium since shortly after the fall of the Therns because it changed Martian culture forever.
That's
So
awesome.
the Tharks are not as warlike. They're not at loggerheads
Yeah.
with the Red Martians because they've had a common enemy for 11,000 years.
Yeah.
And like I can change all of that. And the only constraint is it had better be interesting and
Yeah.
it had better be entertaining.
Well, that's the beauty
But
of
anyway,
things.
that's what I've got coming this year from Dynamite. I've got Altered States. Don't know when I know when Savage Tales is coming out. It's the last Wednesday in April. Don't know when the first Altered States is coming out, but they did just announce it. Uh, the artist has just started drawing Two-Fisted Fairy Tales. Oh, and the second issue of Red Sonja Noir, I just signed off on all the art this morning.
Beautiful.
And that's fun. The first issue came out last year, and it was essentially Red Sonja in the Maltese Falcon,
Nice.
which I had a lot of fun with. And the second issue is a different Dashiell Hammett short story that I've adapted.
Short
The original
story.
Dashiell Hammett short story, if anyone is interested, is called The Gutting of Coffin Yal. And if you want to see where some of the template from Die Hard comes from, it's in there.
Interesting.
So it's basically Red Sonja in
I was
Dashiell Hammett's original version of Die Hard.
I was going to jokingly say you're doing a Dashiell Hammett and a Red Sonja mashup. You don't do Red Harvest. It's right there.
Believe me, I've thought about it.
I'm kidding. It's all good.
No, Red Harvest is one of my favorite books.
Oh, it's an excellent book.
And it just went public domain, and I am actually in the.
Oh, is it? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see the
And
movie
I'm.
Brick by Ryan Johnson?
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, it's like very much inspired by that book. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean, Red Harvest has been the funniest thing in the history of adaptations because it's been adapted 10 times and no one's ever
exactly.
no one's ever made Red Harvest.
Yeah, exactly.
And I am trying to talk Dynamite. A writer should never say this. I almost have too much work with them right now, and adding another thing is going to be a lift, but I want to do a high-toned hardcover adaptation of Red Harvest.
Fuck yeah, that'd be awesome.
No Red Sonja, just like
Man,
there have
look
been
at
enough adaptations that are not Red Harvest. Let's just do Red Harvest.
Do Red Harvest. No, I think there'd be a market for that. You mentioned Darwin Cook earlier. I wouldn't call him a friend,
my
but
God.
I knew him. He lived in Nova Scotia when he passed away, and he used to frequent the comic shop that I go to, And I had the pleasure of having long conversations with him at parties and stuff. And he's such a sweet guy. And those Parker books are amazing. Like
Oh, they're
the
great.
great injustice, so not just on losing him, but
Darwin,
was not
yeah,
getting
Darwin
more
is
books.
such an incredible loss.
Yeah.
And New Frontier, superheroes are not my favorite genre.
Mhm.
I probably enjoy them out of the box more than I do horror and Western,
Mhm.
but still, there's a lot of stuff out there I couldn't care less about.
Mhm.
And really, the super team thing is the lowest bar of interest.
Yeah.
Not that interested in the Justice Society and the Justice League. And that's the most beautiful comic book anyone has ever made. It's like New Frontier is a masterpiece.
But also like a Watchmen, or not, sorry, not a Watchmen, but like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen style mixing of all the old continuity of DC and making it all work together, like the challengers and the losers and all that stuff.
And he gives away the story a little bit by having the John Glenn or excuse me, the Chuck Yeager cameo.
Yeah,
Because I had clocked before that scene that his template is the Phil Kaufman Right Stuff movie.
yeah,
Like, to me, I don't know if he said this out loud, but to me, the pitch for New Frontier is it's the right stuff, but
the
it's about the
supers.
Justice League of America
Yeah,
instead of about the Apollo program or
yeah,
about the Mercury program and the
yeah,
Gemini program. Like, it's applying that weight of history. And also, as someone who loved World War II DC comics when I was a kid, that he kicks it off with the losers
hmm
and with the War that Time Forgot.
yes, I love that too.
You would have to work really hard to lose my interest after starting that way.
Yeah,
Like, that was reading those pages was like, he wrote this for me.
yeah,
This is the comic I have wanted to read since reading The Losers in the 70s.
yeah.
But anyway, I should go.
Yes,
That's
yes.
my year. Really great talking to you, Andre.
Oh, it was amazing talking to you too, David. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. And yeah, when the next time I've got something close to publication, I'd love to come back on and talk about it.
Please do. I'd like to add to the show a series like just updates when people got new stuff coming on. So it'd be nice to be able to do that. So absolutely, let me know.
Great.
All right. Have yourself a great day.
You too.
There you have it, my conversation with David Avallone. Be sure to check out the books. There's some really, really cool ones coming. Those Altered States ones sound amazing with some really cool options and, rich history and some of these old characters. And he definitely pays loving tribute to them all as well. And, check out some of the movies we talked about in there. Brick, it's a great one. Read the book Red Harvest if you haven't. It's a wonderful pulp novel. Read The Maltese Falcon, also a wonderful pulp novel. A lot of good stuff out there in that category, in that genre. Brainquake by Sam Fuller. Watch all the Sam Fuller movies, all amazing. Check it all out. Watch all the stuff. It's all amazing. And so is David. And I'm really happy he was on the show. So thank you very much, David, for being on the show, if you're listening. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Be sure to tune in again next week for another action-packed, fun-filled show. But in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, read some comics, and watch a movie or two by Sam Fuller. I think he needs more attention.
This program is a proud part of the Swear to Pod Network.